Alright, so I've just taken a little bit of a lunch break and I've kind of refocused myself. The way we had wrapped up earlier was I had completed the overhaul of the threadless headset. We had applied the quill stem adapter, the stem, and our Rode drop bars. In the meantime, what I've done is I've added that old seat back on. This will not be the permanent seat, but I do now have the seat at the appropriate height. For my anatomy, I measure from the center of the bottom bracket to the center of the seat, and I know that number for myself is 70.5 centimeters or 705 millimeters. So that's my height, and that's now I've put this together that way, and I've just had this off of the mount, and I had it next to some of my other bikes, and I have to be honest, I'm a little bit worried about the geometry of this setup. I wanted this to be a nice, comfortable touring bike, but the way the geometry of the frame and the fork and the head tube is set up, I already have a significant drop from the seat to the bars, meaning that I'm in a much lower, more aggressive position than I thought I would be on the bike. Well, there is an easy fix. The easy fix is I can go back in and very simply undo this quill stem adapter bolt and raise this whole thing up to give myself a little bit extra play, probably another inch or 2 inches. That would be the quick fix. I don't think it would look the best. The other way to do it would be to get a different stem, which maybe has a longer stem and maybe more of an angle, so I could pop it up and get this. Because ideally, when you're riding, you're going to be on the hoods of your shifters quite a bit. And I just feel like I want that to be a little bit higher up. It might not be that big of a deal. I'm not going to panic about it, but I may have to make those cockpit adjustments. I think I'll be able to tell even more once I get on my bottom bracket and crankset, because then I'll be able to actually put my feet on the pedals and spin around and actually feel what it's like real world style. Before I do the installation of that, I'm going to do one modification of my crankset, because I want this to be, and I'm becoming more and more convinced that this may not be the long-term future for this, but this is my Shimano Dior M590 crankset. It's also called a touring crankset. So it's a triple. It has 3 rings on it, and it has a 48 large, a 36, and a 26 on the inner. But what I'm going to do right now, I also got this used on eBay quite a while ago, very minimally used, but I am going to clean it up. It's a little bit dirty. I'm going to wipe this down, but then I'm going to replace this inner 36 chainring with the inner 26 with a 24. So not a huge difference, but I'm going to get that extra lower 2 teeth, more designed for like a loaded touring type situation. So I'm going to clean this off, and then I'm going to just show you real quick how to take those bolts off and replace that chainring. Alright, so this is a pretty straightforward operation. This is a mountain bike style crankset, and it has, it's a triple, so what that means is it has 2 bolt circle diameters. The outer bolt circle diameter is a, is this a 104? It's a 104/64. The first step of this process is going to be to replace the inner chainring. This is a 26 tooth. I want to make this a 24 tooth, just to give this that little tiny bit of extra range. So the way it works is this inner bolt circle diameter is a 64 centimeter BCD, and these bolts are 6. I believe they're 6 mil. So all it is a matter of loosening up these inner bolts, removing this chainring, and putting on the new one in the right spot. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to orient these bolts again on my little piece of paper in the same way that I'm taking them off, so that I know, just so that I put the bolt in the same exact spot. Shouldn't matter. So that 26 tooth pops off, and I'm just going to clean off this inside bit. Once you get access, this is a pretty good opportunity to clean off some grease and junk. When this is installed, this little metal portion here is going to be flush up against the bottom bracket. That's going to be pushing up against the bearing. So this will want to have a nice layer of grease on it. So I'm just going to put that on right now. because again, it's just a moment where I have good access to it. So I'm just going to put a careful little thin seam of grease on this face. Because once I put that 24 tooth in there, it'll be really hard to get back in there. Okay, there you have it. Now I've got the 24 tooth installed. So now I go 12 tooth steps. It's actually relatively elegant. I'm surprised they don't make drivetrains that are like this, but this has a 48, 36, 24. So it's a 12 tooth that's a 12 tooth drop twice, meaning this has it's got a 24 tooth range from 24 to 48. So when we talk about derailleurs and derailleur tooth capacity, that's how many teeth of capacity that a derailleur has the function of taking up in its chain slack. Asking a derailleur to do 24 in front and potentially I'm going to have 25 in back, meaning 24 plus 25 gives me 49 teeth of capacity. There really aren't rear derailleurs that are designed to take that many teeth. There are workarounds, meaning that there basically are certain gears that I won't use on this bike. For example, I'll never be on the big ring in the front and the big cog in the cassette. I won't be ever in my 48 front, 36 in the back. I won't do it. I won't shift that way. And I will never be in my 24 in the back and the 11 up front. So that's where you're at the maximum of that range, that capacity. But if you don't ever go into those shifts, you don't really need a derailleur that can handle that capacity. So my functional capacity is probably more like, just about 45, which is about the max for the derailleur. So it'll work, theoretically. I'm not sure if it'll work in practice, but it'll work certainly theoretically. And one thing I haven't done before is I have never installed a new chainring like this. And the way that the teeth are shaped, some of them have sharp, and some of them have these squared off edges. There aren't really directions that come with it, so I may have done this wrong. I'm pretty sure I didn't. I'm pretty sure I lined it up the same way that the original one was, but this doesn't come with any kind of installation instructions. It's a 24 tooth. It's designed for 10 speed. By the way, this crankset is designed for 9 speed. It doesn't matter. It should be fine. It just means that it's a slightly tiny bit thinner chainring, which is more ideal for the 10 speed chain, but this will work pretty much flawlessly, I'm pretty sure. Now I'm going to do a mass. I'm going to mass out my crankset. Let me show you. I'm going to put both of these, the left crank arm, the right crank, which is a one piece. I'm going to put these on my scale and get a mass for my crankset, and then I'll mass out the bottom bracket.